news of one of this nation's great newsmen, a competitor and colleague, the face of ABC News for more than 20 years, dead tonight at 67. Peter Jennings, the anchor and senior editor of ABC's World News Tonight, lost his battle with lung cancer. We have lost a man who was a direct competitor and who was very direct in life. He was also a friend and a towering figure in television news, a man who was every bit as much at home in foreign capitals as he was in the millions of American homes he was invited into each evening. And so we begin our look at the world here tonight with the life of a man who covered so much of it.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. In Washington today, they were going out.
He saw his job as exploring and then explaining the world, which he did each night for 22 years. Equal parts fearless and fascinated, curious and relentless. Just ask the two men who had to compete against Peter Jennings for decades.
He had the looks of a leading man. He was a scholar correspondent, and he had the bravery of a knight.
We all made each other better at what we do, and we had a kind of common DNA, if you will. We were all reporters first and anchors second.
Peter Charles Jennings was born in Toronto in 1938. You might say into the family business. His father was a prominent broadcaster and among the founders of Canadian public television. Young Peter hosted a radio show at age 9, later hosted a dance show and sang at the Miss Canada pageant. He called himself a bone-lazy student who then became a self-taught journalist.
Good evening, I'm Baden Langton.
And Peter Jennings for CTV National News.
He was so good, so young, he caught the attention of ABC News in the States and was hired as an anchorman back in 1964 at the age of 26.
Jennings with the news.
But Peter didn't feel he was ready for the inside job and first wanted an understanding of the outside world. So he became a foreign correspondent, covering hotspots for the next decade.
Peter Jennings, ABC News, South Lebanon.
And after years of foreign postings and world leaders came the call from New York.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening.
The desk was his. In 1983, he became the sole anchor of World News Tonight. He had many loves, chief among them his wife Casey, his children Elizabeth and Christopher. He loved jazz music. He quietly volunteered at a New York soup kitchen. Peter Jennings raised and gave away a fortune to charitable organizations. All the while, his work, his first love, went on. Until that day in April, Peter Jennings, a longtime smoker, was diagnosed with lung cancer, and it was now time to share it with the world.
As some of you now know, I have learned in the last couple of days that I have lung cancer. Yes, I was a smoker until about 20 years ago, and I was weak, and I smoked over 9/11. But whatever the reason, the news does slow you down a bit.
That was the last the world heard directly from Peter. Intense chemotherapy followed, and then the fight of his life. His death last night staggered his colleagues.
That's Peter's chair. Has been for 22 years, and in many ways still is. When you suffer a loss like this, you want family around, and that's exactly what we wanted.
He covered many important events that helped define the world as we know it today.
It was impossible to talk about Peter Jennings today without using words like elegant, dashing, unflappable, and urbane. And yet early on, at least, the reality was somewhat different. The young man who never completed the 10th grade, who was terrified of moving to America, grew up to be an icon of American life. For more than 2 decades, they were the Big Three, the three men who anchored the network evening newscasts, including this one. Earlier today, Tom Brokaw joined us from his Montana home to talk about the legacy of his former competitor and his good friend of many years.
I think Peter's great legacy as a broadcast journalist was his ability to constantly force his news division to look beyond America's borders, not just to the Middle East or to Africa, but to Europe and Asia as well. He also attracted a very high caliber of people who worked with him, who wanted to be part of the Peter Jennings team, and he could be very demanding. It wasn't always easy to be a part of that team. I think that's a great legacy, and I think it's now up to you and the people at ABC and the people at CBS to make sure that that legacy lives on, not just for Peter, but for the rich tradition of these individual news divisions.
Tom, part of the reason it's been theorized people are walking around so shaken today is that they're getting used to the notion that Peter Jennings met a challenge that he couldn't beat.
You know, the hardest part for me in the last 6 months has been that Peter was always our prince. He was the guy who was timeless. He always looked terrific. He never was ruffled. And to borrow a line from George Goebel, I always felt that Peter was a tuxedo and I was a pair of brown shoes when we showed up somewhere. And I just didn't think that he could be brought down in this fashion. But at the same time, we must realize that cancer is non-discriminatory, and it happens in every American family in one form or another, and we have to be conscious of that as well.
Well said. Tom Brokaw, thank you for being with us tonight.
My pleasure, Brian.
We'll have more on the life and legacy of Peter Jennings a bit later on in this broadcast.
Tonight, people across the nation are remembering the life and work of a man many considered the consummate news anchor. Peter Jennings, the longtime face and leader of ABC News, died Sunday of lung cancer. At just 26 years old, he became a network news anchor and embarked on an influential career. As a journalist, he covered everything from world politics to tragedies that tugged at the hearts of everyone. The whole time with a gentle air and class about him, something people here in the Bay Area are remembering. NBC 11's Christy Smith is live tonight in Oakland, where those who knew him say he forever raised the bar. Christy?
That's right, Alan. When Peter Jennings visited the Bay Area, he talked about the Middle East and the many, many stories he covered. But friends say that was really just a slice of who he was. They say he was always ahead of his time.
News veteran Peter Jennings' career spanned more than 40 years, but it's one year, 1966, that stands out to Joan Beater.
And had an interview and he hired me.
Back when women didn't go far in news, she was his assistant, now a lecturer at UC Berkeley.
Peter Jennings with the news.
When I first started at ABC, Vietnam was the big story, and every night there was just so much Vietnam footage. And Peter just said to me one day, you know, why don't we just go over to the vet hospital and talk to those guys? No camera, no. He just had that heartfelt feeling about people and the people who were in the stories.
That, she says, set him apart. His curiosity, caring, and candor.
I have learned in the last couple of days that I have lung cancer. Yes, I was a smoker until about 20 years ago.
In the East Bay, that show had phones ringing at the American Lung Association.
What saddens the American Lung Association, of course, is that we lost Peter Jennings today. But I think what that does to us and to our mission is makes us want to double our efforts.
He just had that warmth and that tonic effect on a lot of people. And I think that presence, that sort of, you know, just let me just call Peter, I'll feel better, that I'm going to miss a lot.
Joan Beater tells me that she visited Peter Jennings in June to say her final goodbye. She said that visit lasted about 3 hours. She tells me she'll always remember his laugh. Peter Jennings was 67 years old. Reporting live in Oakland, Christy Smith, NBC 11 News.